Welcome to SorWil Solutions, where we talk about what's going on in our community. I'm Joe Wilson, president of SorWil Technology Solutions. I have with me our professional communications person, Ken Miller. And today our special guest is Todd Thompson, county attorney for Leavenworth County, somebody I've known for quite a long time. Thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Oh, no problem.
This is probably one of the podcasts I've told people you're going to be on. A lot of people are really excited to hear about what you have to say about the things going on. What I'd like to hear, you're a local person, local community kid, grew up here, your family's from this. You've written a lot in the newspaper about your ties to the community. Talk about how you got into, what made you decide to follow this route?
My grandfather had a law degree, practiced law very briefly. I had a fascination with history and what made in government and what made our society work. I love history in that respects. I saw that you do a lot of good and you can make a lot of difference with a law degree. Went to law school. And in fact, I think my senior year of high school, the same year my grandfather passed, he took me to his alma mater, which was Washburn, and showed me around the campus. And I think was hoping that I would do that and go there. And that's where I ended up. My undergraduate was at KU, which is where which is where my grandmother went. And so I was able to do both sides of schooling that they did. When I was in law school, I found criminal law to be the most fascinating, and I enjoyed it the most. And when first my dad became ill, and then my mom became ill, I came back to help care for them. And while caring for them, also was able to get a job at the county attorney's office. And between managing their health needs and what needed to happen, I did that and worked as the county attorney. Unfortunately, my dad passed December of '07, and my mom passed May of '08, and both had encouraged me to run because there was a lot of encouragement. I had a lot of law enforcement, a lot of people in the public. They wanted to see they wanted to see some more. They wanted to see something better to do. Crime seemed to be a problem, and I also was my community. It was my. I just talk about those generations, but it's the community of since the 1840s. I've had family here, so I wanted to help better my community, and so I ended up running as county attorney. It wasn't. It was more that I was asked, and more that I saw I could make a big difference or hope to make a big difference. That I decided to make that run, and that's why I chose that.
Well, what was the first year you served as county attorney?
I was elected in '08. I started January '09.
'09. So 14, 16 years.
Yes.
How has the community changed from a legal standpoint with what you do and what your staff does day to day from '09 to 2025?
I might be the leader of the office, so to speak, but really, it's a team effort and it's a unity effort. One of the things that I've worked hard on, and one of the things I think that a lot of people had problems with prior, was the lack of visibility, communication with the office. I wanted to make sure not only did we preserve the great community that we have had and rectify that, but I also wanted to protect us, particularly from repeat and serious offenders, and then and make sure we prosecute those cases. But in that, I also wanted to make sure we had a more open communication with our office to the public. And now there's limitations with that. Anytime we have cases, they are innocent until proven guilty. And so throughout our nation, we all have the same guidelines that we cannot talk about open cases because we don't want to prejudice the jury. We want a jury to decide, the jury of our peers within the county. That's for them to decide, not for even I to decide. I present the facts that we have and apply it to the law and allow the jury to make that determination of the case. So I'm very limited until after conviction and in particularly after a sentencing of what I can say about a case.
The types of crime, are we seeing any kind of title shifts? Are you dealing more or less with drug cases or violent crime? Or we were going to talk about fentanyl at some point during this podcast too. What has changed since '09 that you and your staff find you're constantly coming before a judge to work on?
You know what, and as I was discussing, what I saw in my first 4 or 5 years is we had a marketable decrease in crime throughout the county, and particularly through the city of Leavenworth. We were seeing 11%, 12% declines each year, and up until last year, we were seeing, I think, not last year, but the year before, we had an 18% decline. Before that, we had 11, 10, 11, 11, something like that, declines in crime. So we're seeing, through the time I've served, a marketable decline. And I hope that's a lot with just having great connections with law enforcement, connections with, and also connections with people in the community, and as well as hiring and having some of the best staff I could imagine. And and that's kind of my priority, is to fight for them, to make sure we can put forth the best cases and pursue those and help seek justice. In regards to like the types of changes in crimes, now I will tell you, when we first started, they would talk about, or when I was an assistant, they talked about that there may have been some gangs that had matriculated into the community, and we have not, knock wood, and have not seen really a gang problem at all within our community, within our county. What we have seen, though, is just the same national trend as the evolution of what drugs are used. I probably came in when there was a little bit of or some cocaine / crack problem. And we still get those cases, but they're fewer and far between. I have seen the evolution into more of a meth being used. And in the last 4 or 5 years, we now see more fentanyl used. And also within that trend, we have seen people abusing a prescription medication. So I've always said, and I've always believed, that 80 to 90% of the crime that we see involves some type of illegal substances or alcohol. I mean, whether it's our DUIs, drugs, or whatever, that always seems to be the paramount issue. It's the impetus for domestic violence generally, is someone intoxicated or impaired. It's like I said, DUIs, it's drug cases that we get. The rationale for robberies, burglaries, or things like that is them is breaking in or stealing from people to feed that addiction. And that addiction seems to constantly be the overarching problem for pretty much anyone who's violating the law. And the only other, part of that, and sometimes they correlate, is mental health issues on top of that. So
We've seen a marked improvement in the way that Leavenworth County handles a lot of these mental health issues as we start to improve the services that we can offer. One of the things is I went through the commission race last year, and I sat through a lot of those commission meetings as I watched you go through the budget process and discuss a lot of the issues where we're almost competing with a lot of these other counties for good hires. And you're trying to retain those people, trying to make sure that the wages are competitive. How difficult is that process to make sure that we're keeping the right people in place?
Yeah, to get what you need.
Well, that's an interesting question. And if you look, I think it was 2 years ago, Chief Justice Luckert made a speech to the state legislature, Kansas Chief Justice, basically entailing that there were first year lawyers making as much as she was. I mean, that's amazing that she's the highest judge of the entire state, and her salary is compared to someone who has never stepped a day foot out of law school. We have seen a trend where we are having less people going to law school. And when you see that trend, prosecution is not the most profitable field. You do it out of a love, you do it out of a passion, you do it out of a want of some sort, but you're not doing it to make money. And so generally, even if you're graduating from law and you're looking at the amount of debt that you have, and you're looking at what you want to do, you're probably going to gear yourself towards where it's going to pay more, even if you want to do something like prosecution or criminal defense, because we have the same problem, not only prosecutors, but defense of being able to appropriately fund them. What that trend has been in like the last, I would say probably 10 years, really affecting over COVID when it occurred, is we started seeing a lot of attorneys, whether they were passing away, but actually choosing to retire. That was something that generally hadn't happened prior to that, is seeing attorneys retire. So if you're taking away the more solid base at the top end, and you're not putting enough attorneys into the system, you're going to see a real trend of being able to have anyone to hire, much less then you're going to see a very competitive trend of offices wanting, to hire other attorneys. I've lost 2 attorneys to Johnson County. I've had attorneys leave just based on mental health because of how stressful and the type of cases we do. Child sex cases or homicides are not something you want to deal in day basis, and you're in the nitty gritty of that. And so, we're trying to make sure not only are we taking care of their mental health and their mental well-being, but you're also wanting to make sure we're maintaining the salaries and keeping them competitive so they don't get, quote, stolen from another office, much less trying to bring in new hires. We've had 2 open positions for probably 2-3+ years, and anytime we actually fill them, we end up losing someone. So that is a constant struggle. And if we're not being competitive, especially in the Northeast region, with Douglas, Wyandotte, Johnson County, we're not going to be able to hire attorneys. And what we had seen is most of the counties were exponentially jumping their salary year in and year out. And generally, when I last year took the base salary that I saw from neighboring counties, by the time I increased those to be able to retain attorneys or obtain, that amount started going up even more. So we're trying to play competitive. I had a former county commissioner mention to me once that, well, we should probably be a training ground. We're just Leavenworth. And that's a disgusting idea, because I've always found us to be the gold standard, the gold star of the state. I pride ourselves that we are the first city, first county, and that we are not second to any county, no matter what the population is, and that we should have just as good talent. And I believe we do, but we're definitely hoping to be able to expand on that and be able to actually maintain them, that they feel a sense of satisfaction, as well as they can maintain their mental health, while they're doing the work, which is so important, not only to prosecutors, but to law enforcement, as you would remember.
You mentioned the open positions. You still have 2 open positions.
We do.
And by extension, the loss of institutional knowledge when you lose attorneys to Johnson County or wherever. What kind of impact has had on backlog of cases? Because I know I've been at meetings and I've watched meetings with the county last year, as a matter of fact, where you had to talk about, look, we need to take care of this backlog. And I think you were trying to get a couple of extra attorney positions filled. Are we at a critical juncture now? Has that eased at all in the past year? Or?
Yes, I think what I think we have moved past a lot of what the backlog has been. Now it's still ongoing, but like you could imagine, anytime you push a lot of stuff into a system, you're going to have a lot that then you have to take care of. Getting things processed has always been one of the most important issues. But obviously, you need time, dedication, knowledge to be able to appropriately apply that, charge that. And so when I mean, my attorneys now look at six trials a week every week. Now, not all of those go. A lot of them plead, but I mean, if you
Rep for 'em.
yeah, and you have all that process. You have to charge them. You have to have a time to be able to review the cases, and we have what's called a vertical prosecution office, which means we take a case from the attorney who's going to handle it generally takes it from birth to grave, so to speak. And doing that, there's a lot of ownership. And of course, I can review as many as I can, or we have a lot of discussions in the office about it, but they have a lot of ownership into their cases. But that means they have to have time to review it. They have to have the time to prepare it. They have to get ready for what's called a preliminary hearing. They have to have to be ready for trial, meet with witnesses. All that is extremely time consuming. And when they have so many in so short time, there becomes ethical issues too about how much you can prepare that. So we have to make sure there's a good balance for everybody, that they're not getting too overwhelmed with everything that they're doing. So.
Going through the budget process again, the county attorney's office and the sheriff's office, I think, from a standpoint, are the largest pieces of the county budget. I think, as I recall, that and public works, I think, were the three largest pieces.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Public Works, I think, is, and I in the sheriff's department, I'm not sure we're on top of that, but I would have to double check those numbers.
My point is, how can the county support you if salaries is important? How can we increase that? We have this problem or this perception that we don't want to raise taxes. We don't want to increase costs. We need to cut. And I know there were several commissioners last year who wanted to cut 1% more out of the budget, which caused a lot of consternation. What can we do as a county in order to not decrease services, but still do something to enable you to be able to do your job at a high level?
Well, and I appreciate it, because we're always looking for any amount of cuts that we can find.
Sure.
I mean, we're trying to decrease as much as we can, but we also have to be able to function. There is case law or AG opinion out there that basically says that the county is mandated; they have to fund us what keeps us functional. Same with the sheriff's office. So we have to have that funding regardless. And that's one of the things that, I have to keep in mind, or do keep in mind, when I'm reviewing or trying to make a budget for our office. As it's been said multiple times, I kept such a tight budget for such a long period of time that when I needed the increases, and they had made such a severe amount of cuts throughout the entire county, that they were still trying to figure out where to cut more. I was not paying a lot of my staff competitively within the own county, and so I had to make sure I did a CORA request, which is Kansas Open Records Act, for what the salaries were for all the counties, to make sure my staff was paid at least competitively with the rest of the county, and assure that they are doing what is necessary. I mean, my attorneys are still paid far less than the rest of the attorneys that are paid in the county, and I think I might be paid less than the other attorneys within the county, at least maybe one or two. But again, and so a lot of that is making sure to maintain them, is keeping a great environment in the office. And I think everybody there knows what responsibilities and what love we have for our community to keep it safe. And so they all, work more because they know they're doing good for society. And so in that respect, you know, we continue to look at what we can do to cut costs, but obviously the paramount thing we want is justice, and we want to be able that people can feel safe when they go home. And so that is probably the overarching thing I have over, anything about budget, is making sure we have that fine balance between keeping costs as limited as possible, but having enough that we have enough attorneys and experienced attorneys that can handle major cases. We have an open capital. We have one open capital case at this point. We have a couple other homicides. We continue to have, rape and statutory rape cases. And so those aren't just attorneys that, like we were just talking about, come off the street. I mean, those are attorneys that you have to have seasoned, serious attorneys being able to handle those. And I can't do all those cases, so I have multiple attorneys that can handle those.
The core civic issue still remains to be played out. But if the core civic facility becomes a way station for illegal immigrants, people that are going to be returned to their, I'm sure you have a vested interest in not seeing people who are put there released into the community to add to the caseload potentially for your lawyers, for your staff. Do you worry about that at all? I'm sure you're following the issue closely, but is that a concern of yours if certain things play out?
I don't have any concern beyond we do our job. If the case exists, we file our cases. I mean, that is my concern, is what gets brought into our office is what we charge and what we prosecute. Whatever we have to do to keep the community as safe as possible, get the cases processed as fast, get them convicted, and make sure the punishments are, again, I don't make the decision what the sentences are. The judges do. I don't make the decisions what bonds or bail are. That's what up to the judges. But, I can do my best to be able to make sure that we process the cases and get what people deserve for justice as exponentially fast as possible within the confines of the justice system. Of course, the justice system never moves as swiftly as anyone wants, but it's, as fast as we can be able to go, with also giving the defendant the rights. And that is a frustration a lot of people have, is the defendant may take a lot more time than they would want for a case. But for us, they have the right to have an attorney, a right to be able to process through that.
I think one of the issues, and it's kind of interesting that you brought that up, that I have heard is if Core Civic were to open up and there were to be an incident within the institution, now you have this person who's an immigrant, who's not from this country, batters a staff member or another immigrant, and now that has to go to district court at that point, does it not?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's not. The way the statutes are written, they're written. So our office only sees felonies from municipalities, and then we see all cases from the sheriff's department, highway patrol, KBI. We do get all cases that relate to domestic violence. And we do get all cases that relate to juveniles, whether that be children are abused and neglected, or whether that would be juvenile offenders. And so that's kind of the variety. So we do get a lot of cases out of Lansing Correctional Facility, but the statutes are written in such way that that they apply to state law. And so if contraband is found within the Lansing Correctional Facility, that's a felony crime. It's a level 6. And if it's a drug, it's a level 5 crime, basically meaning it's a felony crime that would come to our office. There is a enforcement agency that works through Lansing Correctional, where we also see those reports. So you don't have to actually have an independent policing, like Lansing doesn't go up there and police the Lansing Correctional Facility. They have their own unit. And so, but we still receive the reports from them and prosecute those. If there's a battery on a staff person, that would come to us as well, because that ends up being a felony. And so that's how those are processed. But again, we have the United States disciplinary barracks. We have the federal prison. That's on federal property. USDB, that's military property. So they get prosecuted through those areas, and so the federal government takes those. The USDB takes those. In the past, when they had other people being housed at CCA at the time, they call it Core Civic now, but when they had people being housed there, it just depended the severity and the crime, because theoretically a battery could be a misdemeanor within that facility because it's on private land, just like a house or a business or whatever. So if it's a misdemeanor, that misdemeanor could go to the city and not come to us specifically. So I don't think I don't know how they're planning. Of course, we take any courtesy cases that the municipalities choose not to, just so that they're pursued. But batteries are something that the city government takes care of, just like speeding tickets and things like that. So, and since Core Civic is within the city of Leavenworth, if and there is no special statute for private citizens, private employees within the facility, uh, most likely that would probably go to the municipality and maybe not go to my office.
Sure.
So, and so then it's going to be up to them. And, whatever you might believe or not, they're saying that the people being held there wouldn't be there more than 50 days or so. That might not be exponentially worth the law enforcement to, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, but that's a quick turnaround, because anyone who needs to be prosecuted, defended or not, needs to stay to be able to pursue that case. So that's another consideration that the powers that will have to determine, but those aren't decisions, because I have to just wait to see whether we have a case to file or not.
You have some projects that you work very closely with, Veterans Court.
Yes. We started up Veterans Court about a year and a half, 2 years ago. It is our first specialty court. It was a court that we tried to start about 10 years ago, but we did not get the traction. I don't know. We didn't have the amount of judges we had at that time. And we didn't have the same judges there. And I'm not saying that those judges wouldn't, but with the fact that we actually had the time, but we now have funding for it too. Thanks to a generous grant from Senator Moran, as well as another federal grant, we actually have funding to be able to get the court started. In conversations, and if I misquote the judge, I apologize, but in conversations with the judges, they said they really wanted to see that Veterans Treatment Court worked before we start looking at other specialty courts. If you don't know what a specialty court is basically a court for a very specific type of group or type of crime. So they have specialty courts just for drugs. They have specialty courts just for mental health. They're looking at specialty courts for family. And of course, ours is a specialty for anyone who has a veteran or who has been a veteran. Now, it does not mean that they actually had to, it means they had to serve, but they don't even have to be in combat. They just had to serve at some point in time to be able to be a part of our court. One of the things about the court, it is more of a carrot based, as with the horse being led by a carrot. We are trying to more give incentive. I guess that's the proper word, incentivize them to follow. So they get rewards if they continue doing well. Obviously, they get punishments if they don't. But it has shown scientifically that it is more successful to keep people off or stop from doing the crimes. Johnson County has had a Veterans Treatment Court for close, if not over 10 years at this point. In that time, they have had a 90% success rate, which obviously is far higher than what a normal court rate would be. A lot of it is there's a lot more hands-on approach to helping people. They not only do they get a mentor or a sponsor, basically, that they can contact the defendant. They can contact at any point in time that they need help. They also have court-related people that will contact and reach out to them, and then they meet with the judge almost monthly to see how they're doing. Um, these are not our most serious cases. In fact, there's a huge vetting process just to be in there. Obviously, the number one thing to do when vetting is assure that they had had service in the military. But after that point, it is looking at the type of crime. And generally, these are all victimless crimes. And a victimless crime, obviously, is a drug addiction or, something like that. Very rarely would we look at anything where there would be a victim and there would not ever be a chance that it would go without the victim's consent to do so. Also, these are people generally on their first offense. Not always, but generally on their first offense. And if it's not their first offense, it's a very much less serious offense, maybe traffic tickets or something like that. And it is also something where or we could look at they haven't had an offense in 10 years or something like that, and this is the first time. And it's a much more arduous process for anybody than just a regular probation. They mess up, they could still go back to doing some jail sanctions, and if they mess up altogether, they get revoked and they're back into the system looking at prison. So it is not, it's not the easiest, but it is probably the best because they have a lot more resources and a lot more people watching out for them.
It also seems to move those cases through the justice system more quickly, right? If they were just in regular court, probably would take longer. It would back up some other things, but moving them through the veterans court probably gets it through quicker. Yes, no?
Yes and no. I mean, maybe if they get charged, we find out that they're applicable for veterans court and they are willing to take a plea or conviction of it. Sometimes you can do a diversion. Diversion is basically a way to keep it off your record, but you still have to follow almost what's called a probationary protocol, which means do all the things you have to do. Well, the difference is a lot of the cases that they're looking at, their probation might only be 12 months. These veterans courts is mandatory at least 18 months. And sometimes it can go even longer depending how they're doing, what their success rate is. So it can be actually longer on the back end, but it might be shorter if they take responsibility more quickly and they're not convicted and going through the whole justice process in that respect. So like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. This is a really serious question. If you weren't Leavenworth County Attorney Todd Thompson, what would you have been?
I can't imagine anything else. It's literally I mean, I just love it. I mean, it's just it is one of the best jobs. I mean, not only I get to come out and do things like this and reach out to the public or go out to others, be able to educate them, but I also get to, read cases. I mean, I know for a fact that so many people watch what I do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And not like me specifically, but they watch the crime shows. They watch investigative discoveries.
Sure.
They watch Dateline. They watch What a 2020 or whatever. And I mean, every single day I get to go in and that's what I get to do. I can pick up a case, start reading it, talk to others what cases they're looking at. And I get to go through the whole process. And then I get the, the ability to research, write those things. So, and researching is just like putting a puzzle together. You have to find all the little pieces. I mean, so many people enjoy doing research or putting a puzzle together, and I get to do that. So, I mean, that's just yet another aspect. And then I know a lot of other people like to present, like to talk to the public and things like that. I get to do that in front of a jury, and I get to and basically do. I don't want to relate it to a game because justice system isn't a game, but I do have to figure out how I'm going to present my argument. I do have to figure out what the defense is probably going to argue to best put forward my case. So, I mean, I get so many things that I get to do that are so for me personally, enjoyable. Now, I know there's a lot of people who don't like to speak in public, so they probably wouldn't want to be in front of a jury. I know a lot of people who don't want to spend their time reading or writing. And so
Sure.
they're, so it's all different strokes. But if, for me, I mean, I go out, I know that the sheriff has a jail log that they put out online. And I know a lot of people who watch that religiously, like it's a TV show to see. And it frustrates me because everybody who's arrested is innocent until proven guilty. And I don't like them having a misconception that just because that they may arrest them means that they're actually guilty. I mean, that's, even as a prosecutor, I know we fight for what's right. And so I hate that prejudice on anyone until they're actually proven guilty.
You do have a very public facing job and you've been in it since 2009. That doesn't prevent people, newspapers, political pundits from sometimes tossing your name out there for different offices. Because I know I've seen it.
Yeah.
So in this last congressional cycle, I guess this would have been early 2024 for the congressional seat for this district. What are your feelings when you see that? Besides probably being a little bit proud because your name is mentioned with others, but
I think it's flattering. I mean, it's definitely it's a sign that I'm doing things well. I don't think my name would be mentioned amongst all these other names, and considered for something that is as noble as that if it wasn't for what my team and I have been able to show for our community. We have three of the safest cities, per some couple online studies in our community. We have seen crime go down over the course of 10 plus years within our community and the county as a whole. So I know that putting together a great team, I know that putting trying to do what is best has really exemplified any type of a thought that people would have for me to do something beyond this. But again, that's a tough decision. And
you're not ruling it out though in the future.
I don't rule anything out because I never know what the next day is going to bring.
Mhm.
I mean, I only look forward to being able to continue doing what we do here because it continues to make my county as safe as possible. Um, and it's something that is something I don't take for granted. And I think a lot of people, when they've been in a position for a long period of time, you think they start taking for granted. But you know, um, I was just at the Greenwood Cemetery up in Leavenworth, maybe a month ago or so, and they had told me they had just discovered my great 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 grandmother and great 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 uncle um, um, burial spot, and to be able to go up there and know like the history of that, because my, the uncle was the first state treasurer but never served a day in office because he knew that the governor and his team were corrupt, and ended up he resigned before taking office and went into a fight for the union, and the person who subsequently took his spot got prosecuted and convicted
Mm.
of misdemeanors, and my relatives knew that that would be the wrong thing, and it's not fair. That's an example of like my family lineage that I want to continue for my kids, because I know that I can cite that person and know him. And I would hope that, now having kids and understanding that is you have to be the best role model. And the best role model for me is doing the best job I can, because I don't want them or anyone to ever look back and think I wasn't trying my best to be
Mhm.
able to protect our community. And the thing I want to do is make sure that this is a community that continues to grow. And what I can do to help that and help the county grow in relation to, worried about taxes or not, the more people that we come in, the more businesses that we can get to come in, the more revenue that comes in, the lower the taxes are going to be, right? I mean, that's just simple economics. And so people are not going to go to a community that they think is unsafe, because that's generally the number one reason and number one thing that they start seeing when they stop going to communities is they believe it's unsafe. And you've seen it in some major cities that they became known just for their crime. And so you start seeing everyone start looking for other places to go. And what I want to assure everybody is that this is going to be a safe place that they can bring their families. They can, we have good schools, we are safe, and that if something does happen, because something does always happen, that they will feel like this is the place they want to live, and there's going to be justice for someone, something that happened to me.
That's awesome. We're going to go ahead and shift now to another topic, something a little lighter. This is really a deep topic, and we really appreciate all the work that you do.
That's fine. Thank you.
One quick story, because I was working in the sheriff's office when Todd first ran, and I remember who you were running against, and I remember several people coming up to me. They're like, "Good kid, super young, never going to win that race." And when you won that race, there was such a shift. And so many people in the community just felt like change was on the way. I don't know if you knew that, but it's an incredible story. And you have made so many changes, and it's just an amazing job that you've done.
Appreciate it.
As we shift to now, what's on your mind, the segment where we talk about what's going on in our world. Mr. Miller, what's on your mind?
Well, I've been accused of bringing up like dark topics in the
You usually do. Oh my
but I'm not
gosh.
going to do that this time. And what I'm reminded of is what you and I did about a month or so ago. That was play pickleball.
Okay.
And I wanted to give kudos to the city of Leavenworth, because you've now got some nice public pickleball courts, right? This, for somebody who's in his early 60s, I mean, this is the primary way I get cardio exercise, is playing pickleball.
Pickleball
So I
prime.
want to see more public pickleball facilities, whether that's Lansing, Leavenworth, Wyandotte County, whatnot. It seems to be happening. So,
All right.
by the way, who won that when we played?
I believe you won one, and your wife destroyed us. So his wife's an avid tennis player,
That's great.
and she destroyed me and my oldest son,
Yeah.
who is a Division I baseball player.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to say I'm looking forward to this year's draft this week, as looking to see what the Chiefs draft, football draft, because I'm hoping we draft a left tackle that will protect our quarterback's blind side, and then we can actually make some noise in the Super Bowl and not look as terrible as we did last year. And every Eagles friend of mine call me and ask me who was quarterbacking for us, because it was painful, very painful. Todd, what is on your mind these days?
Working kids. I mean, that's that's the business is, if it's not work, it's kids. And we just, hoping to getting fairly staffed, hoping to continue to get the funding that's necessary for the office, and hoping to, continue to have the good relationships with community law enforcement. And, but that's kind of, as I know you have older kids, I have younger kids. So, I mean, beyond that, my life gets consumed with events and, and all that. And then trying to make time to make sure I can get to a lot of the community events that I like to go to. I mean, we have so many fun things that we do within the city and the county of Leavenworth and Lansing and Tonganoxie and Baser. Even, I mean, Easton, I mean, Linwood even. I mean, we really have a great thriving community that is constantly looking and evolving to try to find or do more things that make growth. That it's, I hope more people can be able to participate in those things, because there's always places for people to volunteer, whether it's, with the animals at the humane shelter, whether it's, trying to fix up some of these old graveyards, or or provide art with LV Arts has been doing just a phenomenal job getting things around the community. it's just nice to see so many people out and trying to contribute, and of course, I'd be remiss if not to talk about the Alliance Against Family Violence CASA program, which is so vital and important to me and what we do, because they really do watch out and protect our kids. And I know that, the shelter has something going on this weekend, a celebration for all they do to try to help, with those that, are homeless in our community, which, you know, is, always sad to hear about. And hopefully, and then we have the food pantry that, helps provide for those in need as well. So, I mean, there's just a lot of resources, and we have a lot of great people. We in a really great community, especially, being connected to the fort and those that able to retire that, really do volunteer. And we're a very volunteer centric county. And I mean, I really love it. And appreciate that everybody really, like, even if they're not working or even when they're retired, they're actually back out there, providing and helping out where they can. So it's been nice.
Having gone away for 5 years and come back, I've gained a deeper appreciation for that. So completely agree. Well, that's it for this week at SorWil Solutions. Thank you to our special guest, Mr. Todd Thompson, Leavenworth County Attorney, who I've happened to know for quite a long time. Thank you so much for being here.
Well,
We
thank you
really
for having me.
appreciate it. And we look forward to our next episode.